Okay, today we're going to talk about power, and then we're going to do a quick, short little lab on horsepower. So power is something that you've heard in everyday life. And again, sometimes the meaning in physics, when you're just using everyday words, is a little bit different than maybe the meaning when we're actually calculating it. So power, a measure of how fast work is done. So when you think about that in layman's terms, how fast, that's a rate. So power is work divided by time. So work is measured in joules, time is measured in seconds, so now we have a new unit, and the new unit in time is called a watt. So a joule per second is a watt. Now let's look at the equation here. So power is work over time. But we already learned that work is equal to the force times the displacement. So power can also be equal to FD over T. Now, if I was to take the book, like I showed you the other day, and lift the book off the ground, and I want to know how much work is done, because I am taking that book that has a weight and lifting it vertically, we said that the work is equal to the mass times the gravity times that vertical displacement, which was mgd, divided by t. The last thing is we learned way back in Chapter 2 that displacement over time is velocity. So power can also be equal to force times the velocity. So we see the one new equation here, power is work over time, but you have to remember that work is equal to FD. You have to remember if I'm lifting something, the force of weight is equal to mg, and that d over t is also equal to v. So depending upon what you're given in a problem, and this is why it's very important when you're doing power, is you write down your given, you write what you want to find, and then this will help you to figure out what you want to do. But the way to remember this is the equation right here, power is work over time. So the example says, if a man performed 1,000 joules of work, so I'm given the work, so in my given, I'm going to write 1,000 joules of work. Remember, I'm going to chunk this. I'm going to read it step by step so I can pull out that important information in 5 minutes. Now, minutes is a unit of time. Is that our basic unit? No, our basic unit is the second. What I would do is I like to do all my conversions ahead of time. If you do a conversion in a calculation, I think sometimes, that you're more likely to make a mistake. So I have 5 minutes. Remember, anything like this, minutes is in the numerator. If I have something in the numerator, I put in the denominator to get rid of it. I want to go from minutes to seconds, and there's 60 seconds in a minute, and then I cancel. So now I have 300 seconds. So power is equal to work divided by time. I have the work, I have the time, and a joule per second is a watt. Now, most of you are familiar with something called horsepower. Horsepower is something that you hear when you hear something regarding engines. A lot of people will talk about their car, how many horsepower is their car, or maybe you're buying a compressor or a lawnmower or something else and you want to know how many horsepower it is. Now, horsepower, when you think about it, sounds like the word horse, and that's because the horsepower, even though it's the British system of measurement for measuring power, what happened was James Watt, who was a Scottish inventor, he actually developed a steam engine, and he wanted to compare it because back at the day they were working in coal mines, and they were using horses to pull the on tracks the coal, and this was to replace the horses. So this is why it was compared to how much work a horse does. So the conversion is Watt found a horse approximately could do about 746 joules of work in 1 second. Is every horse different? Of course, but that's what the conversion factor is. So when you convert horsepower to watts, this is something also you're going to have memorized. Okay, we're going to use that today in our lab, but we'll also need to know that for our test on Friday. So horsepower is still used today to measure how fast engine and motors can do their work. So again, there's 2 units of horsepower. Even though we talk about watts in everyday life, we still use horsepower. Okay, and that's it for power.